Hey guys, alright? Welcome everyone. At the beginning, a voice narrates that far, far away, beyond the horizon, there is a mountain where a giant monster lives, known as the King of the Mountain, who is, however, asleep. Next, we see a kingdom, and the voice continues narrating, explaining that there is only one thing that can awaken the giant monster, if Princess Kristen doesn't marry by the age of 18. Her father, King Eric, aware of this curse, is eager to find a suitor for his daughter, and has invited a Danish prince named Frederick to his palace as a potential son-in-law. However, Kristen rejects this marriage proposal, angering her father, who tells her she must marry whether she wants to or not. One morning, however, the king goes to see his daughter who had not yet risen and discovers she has fled, and we see her riding through the forest. Next, we meet a humble young man named Espen, who is walking through the forest carrying in his bag some food he had bought at the village fair. Suddenly, he is startled when Kristen's horse passes by his side, causing him to lose balance and fall into the water. Kristen helps him get up, and then Espen offers her food. She accepts, and Espen is surprised by how quickly she eats all his vegetables and fruits. Kristen says it's because she was very hungry. After eating, Kristen says she has to leave. Espen asks her name, but she only says that maybe they'll meet again and leaves. Later, Espen returns home and meets his two brothers, Per and Pal. His father soon arrives and asks for the things Espen had gone to buy at the fair. However, all he had in his bag was just a soaked potato, leaving his father very angry. His brothers are annoyed with Espen because he is always assigned the easiest tasks while they are always doing the harder ones. His father then tells his brothers to go hunting with him since they have nothing to eat that day. Later, as it starts to get dark, Espen is looking into the fire in the oven when suddenly he feels the ground shaking. He believes it might be trolls, so he grabs a metal rod and starts swinging it as if it were a sword, pretending to fight a troll. Unfortunately, the metal rod from the oven scatters embers, and one of them falls on the curtain, setting it on fire. Seeing this, he quickly tries to extinguish it, but the fire rapidly spreads and eventually burns down the entire house. Meanwhile, the princess, who is still wandering aimlessly, feels something wrong around her. Suddenly, her horse runs away scared, leaving her alone. She soon hears a terrifying roar heading her way through the trees, and she runs desperately. At one point, she stops and hides, but something monstrous surrounds her. The next day, Espen's father and brothers return from hunting, only to discover that their house is in ashes after being burned down due to Espen's foolishness. Everything was burned, even the painting of their deceased mother, which greatly saddens their father. After a few moments, Prince Frederick and his guards arrive there. Apparently, the entire kingdom is already searching for the princess, and the king offers half the kingdom and the princess to whoever can find her. Knowing this, Espen's father instructs Per and Pal to search for the princess, as this is their only chance to rebuild their house and lives. He then gives them his last remaining penny and sends them off. Afterward, he tells Espen that he is on his own from that moment and to leave and never return. Espen, however, follows his brothers on their mission to find the princess, which they allow. Along the way, he finds a broken mirror and a helmet. He picks them up, thinking he might need them for something, which indeed we will see will be crucial for his survival. His behavior begins to irritate his brothers, so soon after, he hears an old woman asking for help. He decides to help and sees a very strange old woman, while his brothers continue walking. The old woman's long nose is stuck in a trunk. He takes an axe to break the wood, and the old woman manages to get free. She says she is hungry and thirsty. Without hesitation, he gives her his soaked potato. He says he is looking for the princess, and the old woman tells him that the Mountain King has taken her away, and there is nothing he can do to save her. But he is determined, so the old woman gives him a magical map that will lead him to a sword, the only weapon that can defeat the Mountain King. And soon the magical map shows him the way he needs to take in the kingdom, which he doesn't notice that he passed over a huge footprint after finding a clue to the princess. A servant reports to the king that they found a giant tooth, confirming the king's suspicion that the mountain monster took the princess away. The next day, the princess wakes up and finds herself trapped in a cave of the creature that captured her, but it was not nearby. Meanwhile, Espen also wakes up and continues his walk to find her. His two brothers are walking ahead and find golden apples in a basket. Being very hungry, they eat all of them. In a few moments, they start laughing like crazy, and suddenly some beautiful young women appear and invite them to their house to eat more. Espen arrives at the same place and sees his brothers in the distance walking with other people quite different from the ones we saw earlier. He also finds a golden apple and begins to feel as if he is under some kind of enchantment, just like his brothers were. He follows the sound of their laughter and soon finds the two eating with the beautiful women at a banquet. He then joins them, when he soon realizes something very strange, where when trying to grab a strawberry quickly his eyes see reality, showing a disgusting dish. Soon he realizes his brothers and himself are hallucinating from eating the golden apples. Apparently, the beautiful women are witches, and suspecting this, Espen pretends to eat another apple offered by the witch to keep him in the illusion. He soon manages to break free from the spell's effect and immediately sees the disgusting reality, rotten dishes and horrendous witches in place of the beautiful women from before. He tries his best to keep calm to not show that he can see reality. While his brothers, still under the effect of the enchanted apples, are happy and laughing a lot with the witches at their disgusting banquet. Espen then pretends and says he would like to go out with his brothers to look around the place he says is his new home forever, to thus deceive the witches. He manages to get them away from the witches and out of their sight. He slaps his brothers who start to come to their senses and see the horrible reality there. Suddenly a witch appears behind them and they run desperately to get away from there. The witches chase them, but they manage to escape just in time before the passage closes. The two brothers then become grateful to Espen, and now believe in him. Espen informs them about the mountain troll. He says no one can see the mountain troll because it only comes out at night, and sunlight turns it into stone. They continue their journey to search for the magical sword to save the princess. While she is still in the creature's cave, which scares her when it brings her food, which however in a way not appropriate for a human to eat, but as she was very hungry, Kristen sees herself forced to eat or she would die of hunger. Back to the brothers, Pal feels tired and hungry, so he sees a bar and decides to eat something there before they continue. With no choice, the other two follow him. Coincidentally, Prince Frederick and his guards are also eating there. One of the guards sees Espen and his brothers, so he immediately reports to the prince. While Espen talks about the magical map, the prince overhears his conversation. Knowing that the map will lead to the princess, Prince Frederick immediately talks to Espen and asks about the map, offering him and his brothers a huge amount of money that can help them rebuild their house. But Espen doesn't want to hand over the map to Frederick, knowing he has no good intentions towards the princess. Out of his mind, the prince tries to force Espen to give him the map. However, Espen throws a plate of hot soup in his face, leading the guards to attack him and his brothers. But his brothers immediately fight back against the guards and a fight breaks out inside the bar. In the midst of the chaos, the prince tries to hit Espen with his sword, but he dodges very well. The waitress tries to help and throws a rolling pin to Espen, to protect himself against the prince. After a few moments, the prince corners Espen, however, he ends up unwittingly helping one of his brothers to get rid of a soldier. Eventually, Frederick corners Espen again, but he irritates a big man who was eating at the table. The big guy then throws Frederick against a wall, allowing Espen and his brothers to escape through the forest. However, as they run, the prince and his soldiers track their scent like dogs and continue to pursue them. Shortly after, Espen and his brothers reach a cliff with no more path to run. The prince and his soldiers catch up with them, but instead of giving up, Espen and his brothers jump off the cliff and fall into the waters, allowing them to escape again. Now safe from their pursuers, Per expresses his frustration to Espen for refusing to take the prince's money. Then after a brief discussion about family conflicts, Per asks for the map, and they continue their journey again. Along the way, Espen finds a bear skin and he picks it up. Meanwhile, the princess wakes up with the creature trying to touch her, but Kristen stabs it in the finger and tries to escape, but fails and is caught by the giant troll. Kristen, seeing that she only made the monster furious, tries to deceive him by saying that she will only marry him according to the legend, if she has an appropriate dress. The creature then puts her back in the cave and leaves. Again in the forest, Espen and his brothers arrive at a foggy place that blurs their vision. However, Espen gets his foot stuck for a moment, causing him to lose sight of his brothers. Then, the prince and his soldiers find his brothers, and they are kidnapped. On the other side, Espen finds the swamp where the magical sword is hidden. He dives in, and some magical creatures guarding the sword try to stop him. But in the end, he manages to grab the sword, and escape from them. Espen continues his journey, and eventually, he finds his two brothers with the prince and the guards. Espen then has the idea to use the bearskin he found earlier and with it tries to scare Frederick and his men. They even run thinking he is really a bear. However, the big soldier knocks him down, discovering it is just Espen with the skin. They then keep him captive along with his brothers, and the prince takes the magic sword. Frederick finally decides to take them together to the Mountain King's cave, to use them as bait. At night, Frederick and his soldiers camp in the forest, while Espen and his brothers are tied to a tree. When at a certain moment, they begin to hear the sound of heavy footsteps approaching, then they hear a terrible roar and the prince and soldiers run desperately from there. Espen and his brothers are tied to the tree, so they desperately try to cut the rope using a small stone. Luckily they manage to cut it in time and this allows them to escape just before the Mountain King can catch them. After that, the troll continues trying to catch someone, until he finds the prince's guards who try to fight back while Frederick flees. Unfortunately for them, the Mountain King catches them. On the other side, the prince hides at the top of a tree. His servant tries to hide with him, but as the troll had already sniffed them out, Frederick kicks his hands making him fall from the tree, being then caught by the monster, which knows that Frederick was also in the tree and soon also catches him. Finally, they also find Espen and his brothers and take Pal with them to their cave. Where now, Espen and Per alone must save the princess and their brother Pal. Espen begins to lament saying that everything that happened is his fault, but Per supports him saying he believes he is capable of saving them. Then later they try to find something that can be useful to them. Fortunately, Espen manages to find the magic sword again. After that, they continue their journey to find the hideout of the Mountain King, where soon after, Espen and Per arrive at a large cave. Inside, they find several human bones, showing them that it is a dangerous place. Further ahead they find Pal's shoe, which confirms that they must indeed be in the troll's cave. Espen ties a rope that will guide them back to the exit. They continue searching along the passages, when Espen almost falls into a hole that leads to a smaller cave, where the princess, Frederick, and Pal are trapped. They throw a rope to pull them out one by one. However, during the process, they suddenly hear the sound of the troll as if it were coming back. But soon they all manage to get out of the cave, and move on to get out of the mountain entirely. However, when they reach the exit, they find the giant troll sleeping blocking the passage. They then try to pass cautiously without being noticed by the monster, trying not to wake him. But the useless prince accidentally ends up hitting the tail of the monster, who immediately wakes up enraged seeing them. They then immediately run to the exit, with the Mountain King furiously chasing them. They manage to get out of the corridor, however they come across a cliff, which prevents them from continuing to run. Seeing that the sun was about to rise, Kristen suggests climbing even higher up the mountain so that the sun reaches them even faster. Then with no choice, they continue climbing, giving their best to climb quickly, while the troll reaches where they were and smelling them starts to climb too to catch them. On the way up, Frederick tries to hide, knowing the troll would ignore his scent to continue chasing the princess and goes unnoticed by the monster, which closely pursues Espen and the others. They finally manage to reach the top of the mountain where there is nowhere else to run. The Mountain King soon arrives, leaving Espen with no choice but to fight. He cuts the Mountain King using the sword, which agitates the monster even more. In response, the giant hits him with his hand, throwing him far away, and with that the sword falls off the cliff. Per tries to help his brother by throwing a stone at the monster, but he also takes the same blow, passing out in the process. Espen recovers from the injury, has a plan to defeat the Mountain King. He yells asking to distract him, and the princess does that while Espen looks for something in his bag, in which he soon finds the old mirror he found on the way before. He then raises it as high as he can and redirects the rising sunlight to hit the troll's face. This causes him to interrupt the attack against Paul and the princess just in time. Then, as the sunlight increasingly bathes the landscape, the monster gradually turns to stone, almost managing to strike a blow at Princess Kristen and Espen's brothers, but fortunately, it turns to stone just in time. Kristen then takes care of completely destroying the stone monster. With the mission successful, Espen, his two brothers, and the princess begin their journey back to the kingdom. Meanwhile, Prince Frederick is also returning to the kingdom when he encounters the same old woman Espen met earlier. He asks her for directions to the kingdom, and the old woman cunningly directs him towards the witch's lair. Meanwhile, the princess returns to the kingdom, and she reunites with her parents. The king offers Espen half the kingdom, but he refuses to accept it. Instead, he only asks for enough money to rebuild his house and farm. The king then agrees to his request, and also says he will allow the princess to marry whoever she wants. After that, Espen and his two brothers walk back to their house, which was now only ashes, and there they reunite with their father, who happily welcomes them back. His father is informed that it was Espen who saved the princess, and this makes him very proud of him. The film concludes with a scene set a few days later. Espen and his brothers are finishing the reconstruction of their home when Princess Kristen visits Espen. Together, they ride off, embarking on their new life.